Surprise me.
Nerds roll.
Oh, my glasses are broken.
Surprise me.
My pocket is protected.
Surprise me.
I am a super nerd.
Surprise me.
Okay.
Excelsior!
I am a super nerd.
The Nerd School Podcast.
Starring Andy.
I am a former entertainment journalist.
I am a super nerd.
TBJ.
Hi, this is Tiffany. You may hear me be referred to as TBJ.
TBJ, y'all.
I am what I like to call a surprise nerd.
Artstar.
My name is Artstar, and I am an artist.
Yo, my name is Joe, and I am the nerd student. The nerd pupil, if you will. And now we're back in nerd school, and I am learning about Iron Man 2 from my nerd tutors. Thanks, guys, for being back here. Thanks for coming back.
Would that be
You're welcome.
Welcome.
Would that make us like neuters?
No. No and no. I'm going to go ahead and nix that.
Yeah,
No.
Tiffany's not going for it. not even. She shut you down almost before you finished saying
Yeah.
that. Okay,
I
so
knew
let's.
where that was going. And it was a
She already saw. She already saw it. And that's what people tune in for. It's the Tiffany shutting Art down. Okay, so let's jump right into Iron Man 2. Got a lot to talk about. This was directed by Happy Hogan, right?
Yeah,
Right.
Jon Favreau.
Jon Favreau, which I didn't realize that till I just looked up to see who did it. I didn't know he directed and was Happy Hogan.
Yeah, he directed the first Iron Man as well.
Oh, and then we probably talked about that. And I've already forgotten it.
All right, so Nerd School is really going to stick with you, isn't
I
it?
guess I'm going to fail my nerd SATs.
Yeah, it's okay to review and be reminded. That's how you pass the test.
Okay. Yeah, maybe.
That's true.
That sounds vaguely familiar. Anyway, I seemed really surprised when I looked that up. So, now Jon Favreau, what do we now? Did he do any more other than the first two Iron Mans?
No, I think Iron Man 2 was his last one because he wasn't a big fan of sequels. He directed Swingers back in the day. That's when he got real big. Him and Vince Vaughn, and But yeah, this is the last one he directed. But I think he's had some input and been in like producers or executive producers. I think he produced the third one, and he was in Endgame. He was in. I think he's consulted on a lot of these projects. Especially if they involve Iron Man.
So is he a big nerd like icon? Like, does he go to like conventions and stuff and do? Oh my God, that's Jon Favreau. That kind of guy is like an icon.
At this point, probably yeah, but because he's been in so many of those Marvel movies. Excuse me,
Tiffany, if you were dressed up as Harry Potter and you were at a Comic-Con and you saw Jon Favreau walk by, would you A, recognize him, and 2, would you care?
Not right off the bat, and I really don't fangirl over anyone in person. I like to keep my composure wherever I am. That's just part of me. It's part of my hard shell. It's part of my hard shell.
yeah, it's kind of embarrassing. One of the things about conventions is just, especially I've been to a lot of them, and a lot of them in a professional capacity, and it always just feels a little weird. The fan part of it. I don't understand why anyone would want anyone's autograph. I've never comprehended that. He's signed something.
I'll get an autograph, but it really depends on, like, I'm never pressed for that. It depends on how long the line is. Am I dying to have it? And it's got to be on something that's a memorabilia piece, right? Like, I don't want your autograph on a napkin. Damn a napkin. What am I going to do with that? I don't get the people who like get their body signed, like their arms, their forehead. Like, what are you about to do with that? Unless you're about to get a tattoo, what is the point? And please don't get a tattoo of someone's name signed on you that is not related to you or has no meaning to where you go in life. So that part I'm not big on. But if it's something like, oh, I have this first edition or something, and I would love to get this person to sign it, maybe I'll wait, but I'm also really lazy with lines.
Yeah,
I'd say like, what's the only point is to sell it, right? To say, "Oh, I'm going to sell this copy of whatever signed," or to brag about it.
Or
Hey,
at least
buddy, I have
with
a signed copy of.
I think if
whatever.
you get something signed and sell it, you're a loser.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, I do. I think that's just to me. That's just you're a loser.
I do
Yeah,
love
it's.
those.
I think a lot of it is, especially at a Comic-Con, is to get an artist's signature on a really cool, have him sketch you something personally.
Right.
That makes more
Right.
sense to me, because you can get in line for an artist and say, hey, can you draw me a picture of Black Panther beating up Batman or something like that, and they'll do that and they'll sign it, and then you can frame it in your home and have a big, cool, nerdy art piece.
Wouldn't that take him like 20 minutes to draw that? Or they can
It
sketch
depends.
fast.
Depends on what
so-
art.
Yeah, some people can sketch it real fast depending on what kind of thing there are, but also you can commission somebody and pay them some money and say, hey, I'll give you these if you can get me a cool picture of Black Panther beating up Batman by the end of the convention, and I'll come pick it up on Sunday, and
And then
it'll be great.
Then you also got to realize that some of these artists, because they've drawn these characters so many times, you know, like even like let's say if I've drawn something a lot of times, it takes me 2 seconds to sketch that same thing out again because you have that muscle memory. So like, hey, oh look at the Spider-Man head, boom, boom, there you go, boom, there you go, boom, just banging them out. You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't take. I'm now they sit there and say, oh, can you put him in this pose, make him? Then yeah, it'll probably take a little while, but you know, some of these artists they've drawn them so many times, it's nothing to draw a quick, you know, sketch of Batman or whatever, you know.
Art,
Right.
No more.
Art as the artist, what character can you draw the quickest? That it was good quality.
I don't know. Like when I was younger, I used to draw He-Man really fast because I loved He-Man.
I've been watching
Yeah,
old
yeah.
He-Man cartoons on YouTube lately.
Yeah, yeah. I hate the new Adventures of He-Man one.
Yeah.
Have you ever watched those?
There's a new one coming out by Silent Bob is producing a new He-Man on Netflix. Coming
Oh,
out.
okay.
Yeah. Not Silent Bob. Whoever played what's the guy who plays Silent
Kevin
Bob?
Smith.
Kevin Smith. Yeah. Yeah. So that's
I
why
knew who you were talking about.
you knew who I meant. So I was
Everyone.
rewatching the old ones because I guess it's gonna ignore those new ones that were done, and it's gonna take place
You're right.
like right after the old series ended. It's going to continue from there. So I was going to try to watch the old ones, and I couldn't get past how ridiculous Mekaneck was. So Art, can you draw, like, say I wanted you to draw Mekaneck, having intercourse with Trapjaw. Could you
How
do
do
that?
we
Like,
always get to such
immediately?
inappropriate
But
territory?
So how, what would they be doing?
well, I mean, your choice.
No, not elaborate.
All right, Tiffany, stop.
Think
We're
about it. Think
so
about
far
it. Because you know,
off topic right now.
like Trapjaw has like this metal bottom jaw, right?
Yeah.
And
And
then
Mekaneck has a telescopic neck that
Right.
shoves his head 3 feet in the
There's
air.
all kinds of great sexual things they could do.
Yeah,
Would this be
we're
like-
not going to break it down.
All right.
No,
And
this one.
Trapjaw has all those attachments on his arm, so that he can attach whatever you need.
Yeah.
Right.
See?
Yeah.
Something is wrong with you guys.
Trapjaw-
Iron Man. We're here for Iron Man, guys.
Okay,
Iron Man 2.
Man 2. Back to Iron Man 2. Okay, that took a turn. So this was in 2010, which seems like forever ago now, doesn't it?
Yeah, well,
it is.
a
March feels
decade.
like forever ago.
What'd you say?
I was looking at the date that it was produced, like it's 2010. I'm like, man, that was 10 years ago. Oddly enough, I just got finished watching Sherlock Holmes' Game of Shadows, which was done the following year, and just watching RDJ. It almost felt like I was watching Tony Stark
Wait,
and
you were-
Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, RB, not Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
No,
No.
RDJ.
Robert Downey Jr.
Robert Downey, RDJ,
J.
RDJ. Sorry,
Yeah.
I just pictured Ruth Bader Ginsburg. May she
As
live,
Iron Man. I mean,
Please
she
let-
That
could
would
be
be
Iron
awesome.
Man.
That would be awesome.
let her live forever. Yeah, she is a superhero. Okay, so the movie opens with Tony's press conference where he announces he's Iron Man. The end of Iron Man 1, right? Left
Right.
off there. And then it keeps going. The press conference keeps going, and we cut to Moscow. It's cold and miserable. And as we hear him say, "I am Iron Man," It closes on an old man watching as he's dying, and then you cut to Mickey Rourke looking slightly better than he did in The Wrestler, but only slightly.
Only slightly.
So that kind of got me off on this whole. I kind of forgot all about Mickey Rourke, and so I got on this whole like side tangent of just looking up Mickey Rourke, and I was like, "What's the thing about him again?" You know, because he like the whole thing was that, and I looked up real quick. So he was a good-looking like heartthrob actor around the time Robert Downey Jr. was, and then he like went into boxing and fucked up his face really bad, and then got back into acting after he had brain damage and his face was all jacked. Right, so that's the whole thing about Mickey Rourke.
And I think there was also a drug issue.
There was some drug addiction too, yeah.
So yeah, like it was a comeback story for him, if I remember.
Did Iron Man 2 was?
I
I
don't know
think the
about Iron Man
wrestler,
2, but
the wrestler, right?
The Wrestler was like his big comeback, wasn't it? Was
He
that
had
before?
just come back. I think, yeah, Wrestler was a couple years, like maybe 2 years before, or a year or two before.
It was like 2007
2 years before.
maybe?
2008, yeah.
2008,
Yeah. So this was like the Wrestler brought him back-ish, and then
I mean,
having Iron Man.
He had done a lot of crap movies in the interim, like
Yeah.
a lot of B movies and stuff.
But this was his
So-
mainstream comeback.
So one of the things about Mickey Rourke in this movie is that he went, I think, full method actor for this. I think he was fully going into, like, this is going to be a serious, great movie. Like, because at this point there was Iron Man, which had just become a phenomenon, and the Incredible Hulk, which had not quite done that. So this is the third movie in the MCU, and so I think it was supposed to take the phenomenon to a next level, and he went full into it.
Yeah.
And I think they wound up cutting a lot of his weird method work that he kind of insisted on, and he
Yeah.
was all pissed about it, and he thinks it's all trash. He hates this movie.
Yeah, I read that
Really?
he got mad about them cutting so much of it, and he had all this extra character development that he had done for this villain, and I thought, oh, how ridiculous that it's. And you can see some of it in. I read that before I watched it. You could see some of that in what he does, but I don't think he did it just for Iron Man 2. Like, I've read that that's how he is all the time. And I actually got. Side note, I got the opportunity to talk to some of the producers of the movie Ashby that he was in Charlotte. They filmed it. They filmed a scene in the Belk Theater that we're all familiar with in our theater's bathroom and on the orchestra level in the men's bathroom. They did a whole day filming, and somehow it became my job to like let the people in and check with them and make sure everybody's good. And they had this whole area set up in the orchestra lobby that was like had to be curtained off. And they're, we have to have these curtains, and we need 8 chairs, and they have to look at all completely different sizes, different shapes, because we don't know what Mickey's going to want to sit in, and you never know, and he's angry if you don't have the right chair, all this other stuff. We have to have a boom box, but it can't be bigger than this. It's got to be this size, and we have to have several different types of music for him to listen to get into character. And so he does this scene in the bathroom, but he needs his time. Whenever he calls for it, we just let him go into his room, and he can do whatever he wants until he's ready. But he's like typical crazy actor stuff. So
Yeah,
Listen.
I volunteer at the Sundance Film Festival for periodically.
yeah,
And he was basically my job is like doing general theater lobby work. So and that's where the big stars come and see their movies like completed for the first time.
Right.
And I've seen him. I've briefly met him, and he was wearing a giant floofly fur coat. I mean, it's cold.
Yeah.
So, and I think he had his hair in the little top knot thing, and he had a little tiny yip dog that he was carrying around everywhere, like a purse dog.
well, and
Yes.
that's what I felt like this character had a little too much of that. Like,
I want my bird.
Yeah, I
Give
want
me
my-
my bird.
yeah.
And then that
Right.
goes nowhere.
that and the man bun that he, and we'll get into that. So, but that was kind of my problem with him. But I liked him being in it, I guess.
I liked him as the villain. Like, I think
Yeah.
he did a really good job. I mean, no one, it's almost like what Jared Leto, when he went method and made his entire cast very angry with him. method can go wrong. I think there needs to be a book called When Method Goes Wrong. There's some good strategies for method acting. I'm not a method actor. But it can go real wrong real quick depending on what role you have. But I really enjoyed him as the villain. I felt good about it. I don't
Yeah,
think
I mean,
villains.
what's there is great, you know,
Yeah.
and it kind of makes sense. He's kind of Whiplash, I think.
Yeah, spoiler alert,
It's-
his
it's-
character's name is Whiplash.
Yeah, although I don't know if they ever say that in the film.
Oh, I don't think they do.
There was, but it's either there's a couple different characters in the comics. I think there's a Whiplash, and there's this guy who was an Iron Man villain that worked for Justin Hammer, named Blacklash, who just looks completely like a swashbuckly pirate guy with a big weird green poofy plume out of his hair and a big old cape with.
Oh, so he might not be
an open
Whiplash?
chest.
He might be this guy?
No, he's not, because Blacklash is an Iron Man villain. I don't know necessarily. I think Whiplash was kind of based off of that concept, but kind of created as a sort of offshoot for to sort of harken back to that Iron Man villain without actually being a ridiculous guy in a big old cape and a big green plume coming out of his masked face. Blacklash is a guy named Marco Scarlatti. I think he's a big fancy pants guy. But,
So this was like taking some characteristics and putting it into.
yeah,
Okay.
kind of because there wasn't a lot of like diehard Blacklash fans. So I think you're not going to get a lot of complaint by
Uh-oh, what was that?
changing him into that.
That was some typing or some researching.
Oh, was somebody typing? Is that you typing, Andy?
Oh, it might have been. I'm
So-
sorry.
Yeah, when you're typing, it like picks up on your microphone.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I was just bring up the Whiplash Wikipedia page so I can get a little. All right. I guess the Blacklash guy also went by Whiplash sometimes, but there's been a couple different ones.
Well-
and I'll try not to type too loudly.
Well,
in the future.
so that begs a lot of the questions. So is the character Whiplash named what he was named in this? Is he a Russian guy? Is it that backstory, the dad, and all that was
No,
dying?
I think they introduced this version of Whiplash into the comics in January of 2010, which is before this movie came out. So I think they were anticipating what he was going to be in the movie,
Okay.
and decided to make that version of the character in the comics.
Oh,
Ah, I see.
now how does that go over in nerd world? Like, are they like, oh, this is just pandering to movies, or are people like, okay, we're good with this?
I think if you're someone who likes deep dives into like superstars rogues gallery, maybe you'd be like, I don't know why they're putting this guy with this guy. That's not accurate. But because I guess they're trying to also appeal to people who don't read comics,
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, even as a nerd who may know right from wrong, I don't think you really be like, man, this dude sucks. He made Whiplash so whatever. But like, to admit that you like a character like that, there's so many better villains you can think about other than like, Whiplash. I mean, they made him big for this movie, but then it's just like, if you're reading the comic book and you see that Iron Man's fighting Whiplash, you're like, oh, this is like, it's not even a full story arc. Like Whiplash would probably be like, the guy that gets caught at the end and, they're going after the main villain now kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't think, like I said, there's not a lot of diehard Whiplash fans
Yes.
that are going to be upset by changes. I mean, he's generally like a flunky, like a guy Justin Hammer hires for Iron Man to beat up and look cool in the comics. So there's not a lot of passionate Whiplash fans. So I think this was a way to kind of take that concept, a guy with these cool electrical whips with a lot of cool powers and stuff, and sort of give it a spin that makes it a little cooler in this day and age.
Yeah, I
Although-
gotta say, based on what I've seen Whiplash in the comics, it kind of doesn't look like a realistic thing you could ever see. You couldn't make that cool, but what they did in this movie, I think they made it as cool as you possibly could. It was pretty cool. I thought. I mean, I don't know.
No, it was done well. I'm just laughing because you said it wasn't realistic in the comics, as if the comics exist in a realist world.
Well, that's
Comic books are real.
that's what I think is like the big cool thing about these movies. It takes these ridiculous scenarios in comics and tries to fit it in kind of in reality, and so what it would look
Yeah.
like if this was real life. So kind of, I guess, taking something off the page into real life, there's got to be changes and things that are different. But that's what I think that's what I like most about these is like seeing how they make. I don't know, when they started doing Batman back in the day, it was like that was the first kind of ones that I was aware of where I was like, wow, they really made it like in today's modern world, and like this is what Batman
Right.
would be like if it was real instead of the Zowie pop bow whatever thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I dig most, because it like makes it seem like it could maybe be possible, you know, and
Right.
you know, when those big explosion scenes and out in New York City and stuff, you could see that happening kind of a little bit.
Yeah.
in a weird way, but-
Superheroes are all around us.
Yep.
Yeah, I think a big part of it, especially at this point, Iron Man, like what the MCU has gotten really right, which I think gives them a lot of leeway to make changes, is that they know what the appeal of the guy is. They understand the
Right.
characters. They're like, a lot of them have actually read comics. A lot of the comic book movies in the prior to this were made by people who weren't really super into it, or producers are constantly making these notes of you have to change this to be more appealing, and all this comic book crap, take it out, make him look cooler, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But this is Marvel Studios controlling their own properties, so they get their own characters, and they're allowed to actually be who they're supposed to be, or at least boil them down to the gist of what they're supposed to be. And in some cases, make changes that improve the characters. Like we said in the last one, Robert Downey Jr. kind of needed to be Iron Man to make Iron Man a more viable character than he was. I mean, he was around for decades. He was a Marvel mainstay, but he wasn't really super popular until
Right.
Robert Downey Jr. kind of gave him a more fleshed out personality,
Give
rather than
some
just
swag.
dashing, handsome industrial tycoon.
Yeah, you give them that because people already like Robert Downey Jr. So yeah, I really think it's still amazing to me what Marvel Studios has been able to do, and to me that's a really cool thing that they've done. Like the whole reason we're doing this whole thing is they've brought in people who aren't super nerds like me, and I get a lot of entertainment out of it. But
Yeah.
and then you guys are appeased too, kind of.
Kind
Yeah,
of.
that's
Still
what-
side-eyeing.
It's still side eyeing. Yeah.
Well, Marvel Studios has some allegations against them, and I'm just side-eyeing right now
Oh.
and watching their behavior at their executive level.
Oh,
That's all
really?
I'll say yes.
I don't know that
But,
I've heard any of this. Have I?
It's at the top. To be top.
Uh-oh. Like sexual allegations?
No. Racial allegations.
Racial allegations is one of the two.
But
it's always one of those
it's not-
two.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised.
Usually
But
both.
It's very high up, so like I don't hold it against the actors on the films or the directors on the film, but I'm looking to see what happens in their executive branch. But I do, yes, give them props for taking something and not just selling it off for someone else to do. Really taking a look at what they have and investing basically in themselves. They bet on themselves by creating a studio that was going to shoot movies based on their own stuff. Like no one really does that much. Like, I'm gonna make my own thing, and really hits it out of the park with this much success. So they've done some things really well.
So do we?
It's not like they didn't try to sell them off. I think they were trying to. When Marvel went bankrupt in the '90s, I think they were trying to sell all their characters to anyone who was interested, just to get some money. So I think they tried, but then I think,
Right.
like at that point, the Avengers were not. I mean, they were the Justice League of Marvel, but they weren't the cool ones. The X-Men were the
Right.
cool ones. So no one really latched on to the Avengers until they said, "All right, we're going to make the Avengers the cool ones now."
And there are some, they don't own the initial right to Hulk, and they don't own. Who else don't they own? They don't own somebody else.
Spider-Man,
Yeah.
Sony's got Spider-Man and his whole chunk of characters.
Yeah.
But
Fantastic Four too, right?
Fantastic
Yeah.
Four is back with them.
Oh, they're back, okay.
Since Disney bought Fox,
Right.
their whole problem with the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, they've got them all back now. I think the only other one that's out there and is weird is Namor the Submariner, and because he was with Universal for a while or something too.
That's
All right.
so
Okay.
weird.
Okay. You've lost me. Okay. I know who that is vaguely, but I'm like my head is swimming with all this info. now.
We'll bring
So
it back. Bring it back
Disney,
to the movie.
Disney owns Marvel, right? Do they
Disney
own
owns Marvel.
They own Marvel
Yeah.
Studios then?
Yes.
And Marvel was like I do remember this. Like Marvel was like in the '90s was like falling apart and going away. Like
yeah.
what? How did they get back to Iron? Can you like make it quick? Like how do they like quick in a nutshell? How do they rebound and get back into where we're at now with the MCU and everything? How did that happen?
Disney bought Marvel.
Oh, they
And
bought them when
therefore
they were
had backing.
They bought them when they were drowning and floundering.
Yeah, after they'd already sold off the Fantastic Four and the X-Men films rights
Yeah.
to Fox and the Hulk to Universal, and I think Namor the Submariner.
I
which
see.
just like
That
saying.
makes sense. So they were selling everything off. Disney bought them before they could sell off anything more. Kind of. That's why all the other ones are in different places.
Yeah, and what they're trying to get them all back under one roof, and they did that just by buying Fox, but they haven't like bought Sony to get Spider-Man back, and they're making deals. I think Iron Man was actually under contract by Paramount for a while because that's why the Paramount logo is at the beginning of I think these first couple movies.
Oh,
True.
so confusing. So
I
many people involved and things. And Disney, it sucks. I hate to give Disney anything more, but then they make
But
such
no,
entertaining things. They just did.
Here's the thing: what they do, is, while they are a big giant entity, and I mean, I love Disney. I love the magic of Disney. Let's say that. What they do well when they acquire something is those teams still work on that thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Pixar is still Pixar, even if they're under the Disney umbrella.
Okay.
Marvel is still Marvel, even though they're under the Disney. Like, they don't come in and wipe the slate and like micromanage the heck out of all. I mean, they're gonna get their money. They're gonna make
Yeah.
sure it's shot well. They're gonna make sure they've invested in it well, and they're gonna make sure they release the heck out of it. But they do let the smaller people, and I say smaller as a relative term because Pixar ain't small, Marvel ain't small.
Yeah.
But they let them still have some creative control over what they're doing. I mean, Disney has the final say and the push, but the teams at a Pixar and the teams at a Marvel are still Marvel heavy teams and Pixar heavy teams. They just have been taken in by Disney. They've been adopted and held and cared for.
Yeah, and there's like Marvel has their company, like they would appoint someone who was actually a writer and creator of comics as like the head of, say, television initiatives, or like there's a guy named Jeff Loeb who helped create Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and a couple of the other shows they did. The chief creative officer, they call it. The guy, I'm blanking on his name.
Who cares?
Yeah,
Get to the point.
but he was a very Joe Quesada. He was a big part of revitalizing Marvel in the late '90s of the comics in the 2000s with a line called Marvel Knights, which is kind of like bring these superstar creators in, have them sort of rework these characters that have been kind of underserved. Daredevil, Black Panther, and a few other people.
Moon Knight.
Moon Knight, yeah, I think he was on there, and that kind of put a whole new energy into the comics. So they eventually bumped him up into the to sort of, all right, you steer the ship, and
Because he proved his worth by revitalizing those underused characters, and so that guy's a huge nerd, right? Like he's a nerd that understands nerds.
Yeah,
And so you put a nerd in charge, and boom, you're all set. Can I say that? Is that the gist of it?
yeah, nerds run things.
Okay, good.
Yeah, nerds rule.
So we could we could have summed all that
rule
up
the
into
nerd
just
school.
they hired a bunch of nerds to fix it. Okay, back to the movie. So the old man tells Mickey Rourke as he's dying and watching Iron Man be Iron Man that should be him. It should be Mickey Rourke and not Iron Man, and says all he can give him is knowledge. Then he dies, and Mickey Rourke starts crying dirt tears because he's covered in dirt. and then screaming in rage, that typical kind of thing. I just can't help wonder how many takes that was of him angry scream, and then cut to him looking at blueprints and an opening montage of him welding shit like a badass is what I wrote. And then we got flashes of Robert Downey Jr. articles where he looks like the guy from Weird Science, and Rourke feeding his bird some blue liquid. Then you see him smile as he recreates Iron Man's heart light thing. I don't know what that's called, but it's not to be confused with
Arc
E.T.'s,
reactor.
not E.T.'s heart light. Turn on your
Arc
heart
reactor.
light. Remember that?
It's arc reactor.
Oh, arc reactor. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, nowhere close to ET's heart light.
But shout out to Neil Diamond, right? That Heartlight song is the best song probably ever, and it kind of ushered in a new era of hip hop. Like Wu-Tang Clan was inspired by Neil Diamond.
Did they tell you that personally? Did you have lunch with Wu-Tang and they were like,
Cheadle,
yo.
Don Cheadle told me that. No, okay.
Oh, your best friend Don Cheadle. I
yes,
forgot
he is
how
my
much you guys
I
were.
wish he was. Okay, cut.
Yeah, 6 degrees.
And well, we're gonna talk about Don Cheadle too, because I made some notes about Don Cheadle. You're gonna like the way I've come around on Don Cheadle, Tiffany. But that's just a preview.
Oh, good.
Cut to Iron Man. What's that?
I was gonna say I have some little issues with certain things that happen in the movie surrounding Don Cheadle. But go on.
Okay, we'll get to Don Cheadle in a minute, and you can
Don't
voice all your
start
opinions.
a
I'm not-
war with me over
it's not-
Don Cheadle. I'm
it's
warning
not-
you
it's-
right now.
It's not a war. It's just some things.
I
I mean,
fell in
it's
love
just
with him.
movie things. It's movie aesthetic things.
Okay, we'll talk.
Okay.
We'll talk
Yeah.
about that when we get to Don Cheadle.
Listen, I'm ready to fight over Don Cheadle. Go ahead, Jim.
I think I'm on your side, Tiffany. I fell in love with Don Cheadle in this movie. All right,
Good.
cut to Iron Man with AC/DC playing, and he takes off flying out of a plane and flies into a huge stage show at the Stark Expo in Flushing, New York. Ladies dancing everywhere, American flags, etc. And we see Tony in a pinstripe suit, taking credit for all the peace in the world, basically goading. Like, this is the scene where he's goading villains into trying something, because obviously foreshadowing the evil villain Avenger caper that's about to happen. He's like, I've made everything safe. I've caused world peace. Obviously, that means something's about to happen.
Yeah, so he's still dealing with his, like, he's changed. Like, if you remember in the first one, he was so egomaniacal that he didn't care about the collateral damage of his weapons. He's come
Right.
around on that, but he's still super egomaniacal.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Still
I
that guy.
just recently watched Civil War, and just watching him in that, like him versus Cap in that, like it's one of those things like Tony Stark. Even when he's the good guy, he still has those underlying asshole tendencies in him.
Yeah,
It's just a part of who he is. That's his
Yeah,
personality.
yeah.
And I think they do a good job of staying true to his personality. Because, like you said, even when he is doing good, he's still he's just an ass. He'll always be a bit of an ass. You'll never escape him being a bit of an ass. But turns out he's an ass with a little bit of heart. But he's still an ass at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's I felt like that. Yeah, and they, again, like as I watch movies, as things have changed, and we've talked about in the first one, like the misogyny in there with how he treats women, and like all the ladies in the Iron Man bikinis or whatever. My gut is to be like, oh, this is misogynistic, but then it's like you guys pointed out to me last time, like that's painting Tony Stark, like that's who he is, like he's that kind of guy, and so it kind of gives you that skeevy kind of flashy, whatever, asshole-ish thing like we're talking about. But I have some questions that I wrote down at this part. So, is the Stark Expo, is that like Comic-Con? Is that like who attends the Stark Expo? Is it just tech nerds, or would comic book geeks love it if it was a real thing? Would it be filled with cosplayers, or would it be the people who were there? Would you guys go if it was real?
To me, the Stark Expo would be, I guess, almost like a CES, but with weapons, like the Consumer Electronics Show. That kind of.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think would be like for nerds. I mean, it'd be for like tech gurus and those type of nerds.
I think it's like
And
more
really-
like the World's Fair, like the World's Fair of back in the like just see the amazing things of the future.
Yeah.
But although that's more of a like you'll see that in Captain America, they'd have a World's Fair kind of thing.
Oh,
I think
because
that's
that
like
was in the
first
40s.
Stark Expo.
Yeah.
Right.
From Howard Stark.
See, I see it very much what it is now, like Art said. It's like that big, because it's in Vegas now. Don't they do the consumer thing in Vegas?
Yeah,
Where you
yeah,
go
yeah.
and you test the new robot and you test the new. So I think it's like that. And you're going to get a little bit of nerds in there because it is Tony Stark, a.k.a. Iron Man. So you're going to have some fans in the building. But
Yeah.
the main audience of the Stark Expo seems like it's people who need to know about this technology, who probably have the money to utilize this technology.
Like
Well,
business people.
Yeah, but also
Yeah.
probably some military mercenary
Yeah.
type.
Yeah,
too.
military. Yeah,
Oh,
right.
yeah.
See how we can
100
weaponize this. Yeah.
Yeah, private contractors.
Right.
Contractors.
Private contractors.
Yes, that's the right
Okay.
word. Private
So,
contractors.
yeah,
Like
that's what I
Hail
was.
Hydra, so to speak.
No.
That's what I was kind of wondering as it came out, and I was like watching the crowd, and I was like, "Well, this is clearly just extras that they hired because they're attractive generally, or who is in the crowd." So I was like, "Shouldn't there be cosplayers, like somebody dressed as Howard the Duck or whatever?" And I don't know, but
No.
Well,
So
you,
no.
not
you
quite.
did have the cheerleaders there dressed in the Iron Man
yeah,
outfits.
yeah, and
That's
You
sort of a
did.
nod to
and the little
cosplay.
kid dressed as Iron Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who I have a note about that later. But okay, back to the Stark Expo. Howard Stark is talking about the city of the future, while Tony is concerned about the numbers on his fancy device that says his blood toxicity is 19%. And that's the first. I think that's the first glimpse we see that he's actually in danger, like health wise, right? Isn't
Right.
that the first time we
Yeah.
see this? I mean, I guess in the first movie we know what happened, but. And so, okay, now at this point we see the Stark Expo crowd shots, and my answer is no. According to this, it's not a Comic-Con thing. It seems more like a red carpet type event with good-looking people everywhere. No offense, nerds. Beautiful women clamoring
Hey.
for Tony.
Wait. So you're saying
Hey.
nerds can't be good looking?
Children
Hey.
wanting autographs. No, now they can, I guess. You're right, yeah.
Oh.
Well, Andy, I think Andy or somebody showed me pictures at some of these Comic-Con, these like people dressed up like that go full on out, like they look like they could be models, and I was
Yeah.
like, are they hiring these people?
They are
No.
models.
You just
I guess
some
they
are,
are.
but there are plenty of people who are very into things that would surprise you.
Well, just
I
like
went-
this, you guys, both Arthur and Tiffany, surprised me. I didn't peg either one of you for being huge nerds.
So are you saying we're good looking?
Yeah, you guys are too good looking to be nerds. You guys both have some style. I mean, Art, I never see you outside of a uniform usually.
He's
so I
always
don't know.
in uniform.
Yeah, but I mean, you guys don't come off as nerds. Where Andy,
Nerds. Right.
Andy comes
We're
off as a
unassuming.
huge nerd. Andy's Arvid.
I
from
wouldn't
Head of the
have.
Class.
I wouldn't have known Andy was a nerd, until you told me Andy was a nerd. I wouldn't.
Okay.
I would be like, Andy's not a nerd.
I would have known.
I wouldn't have thought it.
I would have
I wouldn't
known.
have thought it.
I'd have put
Well-
if you would have been like, Andy's really into this, I'd have been like, fits.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I there have been times where I've gone to Comic-Con and just looked around and realized that, all right, black T-shirt, cargo shorts, pudgy, doughy white guy with a goatee and glasses. I am everybody. Everybody is me. You're
are you-
all the same person.
These are
Are
your
you
people.
Are you
Yeah.
equating yourself to comic book guy?
I'm not that far, but that's a constant nerd battle.
Worst explanation ever.
That's a constant battle with a lot of nerds is to how far do you go into comic book guy
Right.
before
Before
you
you've
can
gone
bring
too
yourself
far.
back from the edge. They can
Right.
get real worked up about. I can't believe they changed Blacklash into Whiplash, or
Right.
can you dial it back and sort of unclench?
See, that's what we need to get.
Unclench. There you go. Unclench. Please.
Unclench is perfect. We need to get the rights to some comic book guy quotes to put in the intro to this, because that he's always complaining about whatever, and that's hilarious.
There's the famous bit where he's walking down the street complaining about Aquaman. Saying, "Oh, Aquaman, you can never love a human. They don't have gills," or something like that. And then he looks up and sees a nuclear bomb going off, and he goes, "Oh, I've wasted my life."
Yeah,
And then he dies.
That's one of my favorite
Yes.
ones. I've wasted my life. Yeah. Anyway, that's a funny bit that we should get into more.
But
But
we are totally not wasting our lives doing the Nerd School podcast.
no, but we're making
No.
something out of it. Yeah, right. We're
We
drinking beer.
are teaching Joe. He is learning. He's going to grow from this. When we have a conversation with him, he won't look at us weird because we went into something that he wasn't aware of. We are helping. We are helping the world at large by educating.
He's going to evolve.
That's
Nerd
Yes.
Joe.
Yep.
We're evolving, Joe.
And I'm gonna buy more Underoos every time. I actually own He-Man Underoos now because I probably you
I
guys.
own Batman Underoos. I own
Okay.
Star Wars Underoos.
I was able to get Groot Underoos for my wife.
What?
Nice.
That
loves the Groot.
exists.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for Underoos. And this episode of Nerd School Podcast may someday be sponsored by Underoos.
I know. Hey, Underoos, if you hear us out there.
I used to love Underoos as a kid. Okay, quick. What was your favorite Underoos when you were a kid?
Spider-Man.
What'd you say, Art?
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. Yeah, his was the
Yeah,
coolest.
I think I wore the Spider-Man a lot. I like the
Superman.
Shazam.
Shazam was good.
I remember being very angry about the Hulk.
Yeah, the Hulk was a bullshit Underoos.
I think you talked about it because it wasn't as fun. It didn't look as great.
It was a white shirt with a picture of the Hulk, like a Izod shirt.
I'm
or
still
something.
mad about that.
Why wasn't it a green shirt with kick-ass muscles?
Yeah, that's what it should have been. And nowadays,
They
I think it is.
disappointed you.
I think we're out of time. Let's leave it there, and we'll come back and continue Iron Man 2 next episode.
Nerds roll.
Oh, my glasses are broken.
Surprise me.
My pocket is protected.
Surprise me.
I am a super nerd.
Surprise me.
Okay.
Excelsior!
I am a super nerd.
The Nerd School Podcast.